thank you for joining us for another episode of Modern Living with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Today's episode is Loving Someone with PTSD. I was recently asked, can someone with PTSD even love? Can they be in a relationship? And the answer to that is yes. When someone you love is distant, anxious, or even angry all the time, your relationship can suffer. It's hard not to take the symptoms of PTSD personally, but just know that love is there, but it's kind of buried deep under all of their layers of pain, fear, and anxiety. So today we're going to discuss 5 tips or ways that you can better understand how to love your someone with PTSD so that you can share that information with friends and family and you can be more supportive and less upset when dealing with that particular person who is also trying to survive PTSD. So we have a few sponsors today, and I'd like to just mention them before we get started. Our first sponsor is author D. Bryant Simmons. The other sponsor is PQQactive.com. And last but not least is Lipstick Chronicles magazine. Be sure to check them out on social media. They can be found on Facebook. And, of course, that's facebook.com/lc.emag. That's M-A-G. And they're also on Instagram. And that's Instagram.com/LC_mag. And again, that mag is M-A-G. Be sure to visit them. They have some really great articles on in their magazine. And they're also available online. So you can take it with you on your phone or on your tablet. So let's get started. What are some things that we need to know about PTSD? Or some tips that you can use to better understand how to deal with your loved one. Tip number 1, and they're in no particular order. Tip number 1 is that you need to realize that their trauma has changed them, and they're never going to be the same. Now, PTSD can affect anyone who is post-trauma. And you may think, well, maybe this only affects our military men and women. No, it doesn't. It definitely includes them, but it is not exclusive to them. If your loved one is a first responder, if they're a police officer, a firefighter, an EMT, it can affect them. If you've ever been a victim of Mother Nature, and I say that meaning we look at the many people who were devastated by Hurricane Katrina. Many of those survivors are now PTSD survivors. We look at if there's ever been an accident. If you remember the great and awesome landing of Captain Sully on the Hudson River, many of those people suffer from PTSD. They were trapped by the water. Though everyone survived, many have different stories, just depending on where they were. If you've ever been in a car accident and your car has flipped over, or perhaps you had something happen to you as a child, and you don't consciously remember what happened. You're aware because of the stories have been told to you, but your body definitely remembers what went on. Well, we have to also look at people that are trying to survive day to day, and they are living either at or below the poverty line. I know that many times people don't consider that to be a traumatic experience, but can you imagine not knowing where your food's coming from? Can you imagine not knowing where you're going to live? Not just being displaced, but being homeless every single day for quite some time, and especially with children or teens. That can be a real traumatic experience with them. So please broaden your understanding of what it means when someone says that they have PTSD. Sometimes the person may not look like you, but still suffer. They may be male or female. They could be young, old, middle-aged, educated, uneducated, well-off, or barely getting by. Like I said, PTSD is no respecter of persons, and it really and truly can touch its finger upon a variety of people. So again, what are some things that we can do? One is that understand that the trauma changes that person, that they will never be the same. That though they wish that they could return to the person that they were before the traumatic incident, that it is now a part of who they are, that it has not just changed their lives, but it has made an impact upon their very souls have been changed. Many times people will say, well, I look into their eyes and they just seem so distant, that they're despondent, that they're not there. They're just not the same person anymore. And that is very, very true. It also depends on when you are making contact with that person. Was their experience something that happened recently, something that happened within the past 2 to 3 years, or something that has happened within 5 to 10 years in the past? They are going to be different people at those stages, but you're still going to notice that they were not the same person that they were before the experience has happened. Understanding that really makes a difference in how you interact with the person. If you know that that person is not going to be the same immediately, it allows you to relate to them with a little bit more empathy. Now, we no longer call it, when we're dealing with our military personnel, we no longer really call it being shell-shocked. That's more of terminology from the 70s or even from the 80s. But that still applies. Someone is still reliving that moment in that war, or they're still reliving having to be a responder to a horrific incident that happened. Or perhaps they're reliving the smells, the screams, or just the darkness of wherever they are. Once you kind of wrap your mind around that, that's your first step in understanding what your loved one is going through and knowing what you need to do to help them better cope and deal with what they are trying to go through. Number 2, you have to understand that your loved one is simply not going to get over it. Now, that is a phrase that tends to kind of kick people off, if you understand what I mean. And not just people who suffer from PTSD. Anytime someone, a person or a people, have gone through something that has changed who they are to their core, one of the most insulting things you can say is, get over it. Now, we know that especially in this country of the United States, that we are a hodgepodge, a melting pot, a collage. We are a nation of various peoples, and that various traumatic experiences have happened to numerous peoples that reside here. And one of the things that when you don't want to deal with something, you tend to say, oh, get over it. It's been X amount of years. You guys should be past that by now. But if you understand that if one person takes a while to get over a traumatic experience, imagine when it affects a group of people. So we can't expect for anyone who's grown up in poor living conditions to just get over it. Kuwaiti, Iraqi, Iran, Afghanistan, any of our war vets to just get over it. The same way that we cannot expect for our awesome and brave first responders to 9/11, be it that it was at in New York or at the Pentagon, they chose to go in and save our fellow citizens. but we have to be better at understanding that they're not going to just get over it. If we understand that time is an awesome, awesome healer, but everything doesn't fade at the same rate for everyone. You can get over a divorce. You can even get over a death of a loved one. But when you are still walking in the experience, it's a lot different. When a smell can trigger that memory, when a sound triggers that experience, it's different. Imagine being in the middle of gunfire every day for 6 straight months. Or imagine being a first responder and hearing the screams of someone trapped under a fallen building. You don't just get over it. One thing that you can do as a loved one is understand that your loved one is trying to what? Survive every single day. They too wish that hearing a screaming baby or hearing fireworks, which may remind them of gunshots, is tough. That sometimes what is a celebratory moment for someone else is a trying time for another person or even another group of people. Just having some empathy sometimes will help when you know, that's a trigger for them. Okay, maybe I should even get my person away instead of wanting to be in that experience because it brings you a sense of happiness. We have to learn what is best for our loved one when we too are trying to help them cope with their PTSD. Well, we're going to take a very short break, and when we get back, we'll continue to talk about what are some tips that you can do to help your loved one continue to survive their PTSD. We'll be back right after this.
I'm not a celebrity, but I have a story. I don't walk the red carpet, but I walk an inspiring path. The paparazzi doesn't follow me, but I'm making history. I'm not famous, but my story has to be told. I am a Lipstick Chronicle. Read about me in the next issue of Lipstick Chronicles magazine, available at www.lcmagazine.org.
And we are back. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Modern Living with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Today's episode is dealing with loving someone with PTSD. We are looking at what a loved one, or perhaps even friends and family, can do to just better understand their loved one and how they can assist them in coping with their PTSD. So tip number 1 was realize that they will never be the same. Are they going to be able to be an awesome person? Of course they're going to be able to be an awesome person, but they're not going to be the same, identical, awesome person that they were before that traumatic experience has happened. They will be able to reshape themselves, remold themselves, and be able to take that experience at some particular point and turn it into something. But until they're ready and able to do that, we have to be a little bit patient with them. Tip number 2 was realizing that it's chemical. They are not going to simply get over it. When something traumatic happens to us, we have a chemical reaction. Think about it. When you're frightened, when you're scared, when that big bad dog just appears out of nowhere, or someone startles you and you get that adrenaline drop, that kind of feeling in your gut, oh my gosh, that's a chemical reaction. Now imagine that happening every single day, day after day after day. When that person when they were in the incident that happened or immediately following the incident, the chemicals don't just immediately dissipate. Our bodies react to them. So realizing that it's chemical will definitely help as well. Number 3, I want you to remember this. They love you. They really, really do love you. They do not hate you. Unfortunately, when they are in the middle of that angry outburst, they're not responding to you as much as they are responding to that trauma. They feel trapped by the trauma. They feel as though they're in a box or in a cage and they just want to get out. And when triggers that response, unfortunately, loved one, you kind of get the full force of that. If you can somehow learn to separate the difference and see that it is not personal. Now, learning how to separate it, that's a show for a different day. That's a class for a different day. That's coaching for a different day. But if you can learn how to separate it and not take it personally, that will be such a great service, not only for your loved one, but for yourself, because you will understand that, okay, is this response actually appropriate? And that's one thing that we teach you. Is the response appropriate? If it isn't, then you know that they're not lashing out at you, that they're actually lashing out at something else. And it's probably something that has triggered a memory from their traumatic experience. Number 4, realize that they need you. Boy, do they need you. Your presence in their lives matters so much. That traumatic experience has isolated them from the world that they once knew. Now, because they're operating from a sense of fear, it's as though, if you can imagine that there's this big wooden gate, and the world is on one side of the gate, and your loved one or your friend is on the opposite side of the gate. They're now trying to function in the world, kind of looking through a peephole sometimes. Or they kind of crack the door a little bit and they see this vast world out there. But it's not the same as the way it was before their traumatic experience. Having you on the same side of the gate, having you on the same side of the gate as they are is so important. Knowing that you're there with them, that you are willing to experience life with them as opposed to against them, not kind of in them for trying to be the best person that they can be, but still falling short of your expectation, that you're choosing to be there with them, that even when they are at their worst, you are still trying to see them in a positive light, that you're still trying to encourage them, that you're still trying to love them in spite of themselves. That's awesome. That says a lot about who you are. Is it tough? Oh, of course it is. Is it hard to not take it personally sometimes when they lash out? Of course it is. But if you can remember that when you were going through something tough and your best friend, your spouse, your sibling, your parent was there with you, that they held your hand, that they showed up in court, that they were willing to vouch for you, that they were just willing to sit there on the curb with you and wait. There's nothing like being alone when you really wish that you had a friend. That's what your loved one wants to say to you. Boy, do I love you. Boy, do I need you. Please don't go away. I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. I'm so sorry that I pushed you away. But I'm so angry. I'm so hurt. I'm so discombobulated. I'm just not myself. Please don't leave me. It's hard to articulate that. It's hard to say that, even when you don't have PTSD for many people. So imagine someone who suffers from that, trying to think of the right words to say that to you when they many times don't have the right words to even express what they're feeling or what they're going through. Understanding and patience is key. Well, before we get to our very last tip, we're going to go to our very last break. And when we return, we will continue discussing how we can love someone with PTSD, because they definitely need us to love them, and they want to love us back. We'll be back right after this.
Love good books? We've got great news for you. D. Bryant Simmons, author of the popular Morrow Girl series, is teaming up with highly esteemed narrator Robin Miles to launch an audio version of the award-winning first book of the series, How to Knock a Brave Bird from Her Perch. And you can help. Go to dbs1.pubslush.com. Join in on the crowdfunding fun, and you can become an important part of the Morrow Girl saga. Earn rewards like limited editions of the audiobook and other great prizes. The reviews are in, and the book's theme on family and domestic abuse resonate with its readers. Join with us and receive sponsor recognition, one-on-one help with self-publishing, signed CDs, signature tees, and much more. But act now. Go to dbs1.pubslush.com. That's dbs.pubslush.com. Join the fun. Earn rewards. Make a difference. dbs1.pubslush.com.
Every human cell contains tiny organelles called mitochondria. However, mitochondria are especially vulnerable to damage by oxidative stress, resulting in aging and age-related diseases. It's now being proven that the number of mitochondria in your body determine human longevity. What if we could bottle a nutrient proven to trigger the number and health of mitochondria in your body to halt and reverse cellular aging? New science tells us how. Go to pqqactive.com to learn more.
And we are back. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Modern Living with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Today's episode is Loving Someone with PTSD. Many times I am asked in my practice, what do I do? My loved one or my friend or family member is suffering from PTSD, and they've become more and more difficult to deal with on a day-to-day basis. What do I need to do? Well, short of course, coming in for workshops or getting private coaching, having that one-on-one, there are some things that you can do, and we have 5 tips for today. So far, we're about to go to number 5. We know that 1, if you realize that your loved one is never going to be the same, not that you can't be an awesome person, but of course, something traumatic has happened, so they have changed. Number 2, realize that it's chemical. It is in their blood, so to speak, that they're just not going to get over it. There has been a definite imprint upon their spirit with the incident that happened. Number 3 is that, yes, they love you. They definitely love you, though they're not able to always express. Number 4 is that they need you. Your presence in their life really, really, really matters, and that they do not want you to go away. They may need their space from time to time, don't we all? But they don't want you to leave them or abandon them. That will just add to the traumatic experience. And last but not least is that one thing that you can do is when your person is having that outburst, when their anger just flares up and their temper just seems like it's more than what you can handle, you need to come up with what I refer to as a pause word. Yep, pause word. Now, many times the word that you can come up with is pause. But if you don't like that or you think that that's a little awkward, the other word that you can come up with is anything that you decide. I kind of like the word eggplant. Now, it should be a word that wouldn't usually or normally come up in your conversation. Perhaps hamburger or coffee. That might come up in your conversation, but eggplant may not. What you want to do is when that person is really starting to escalate, when their tone is starting to change, their demeanor is starting to change, their pitch is starting to change, they're getting louder and louder and perhaps even more aggressive, you just need to say, pause, pause. That pause is to let them know, hey, you're kind of starting to go there, and especially if you're in public. If you're at home, it's a little bit different because, of course, you're in the privacy of your own home. But in public, other people may not know that your loved one is suffering from PTSD, and they think that they're just kind of this crazed person in the middle of Target. You're trying to bring them back to conversation tone, to conversation level. As I believe our elementary school teachers would say, use your inside voice. We want to kind of de-escalate the situation and help them get back to center as much as possible. They can still carry on the conversation, but kind of bring it back down to a tone that's a little more enjoyable for everyone. Learn to use a pause word. Well, I hope that my 5 tips have helped you know that there are some things that you can do to continue to love your loved one, family member, or friend that is suffering from PTSD. If you would like more information, or perhaps you're suffering from PTSD yourself and you would like some care or some more coping skills, number here at the office is 562-209-2083. That number again is 562-209-2083. Or you can find us on the web at www.newlifepastoralcounseling.com. I know, really, really long. Type in Dr. Angela Chester, New Life, Long Beach. You'll be sure to find me there as well. If you would like to have perhaps e-counseling, that is also available. If you're not in the Long Beach, Los Angeles, or Orange County area, I can still assist you. I hope that you will join us every Tuesday for Modern Living with Dr. Angela, where we discuss the things that affect today's Christian from a mental health perspective. Until next time, may you have an absolutely awesome day, a great week, and know that your mental health is key. Mind, body, and spirit. Holistic approach to Christian counseling. Until next time, bye-bye.